to be frank, I didn't care about any of them. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Today I am doing another of my Behind the Bandwagon book reviews. If you're not familiar with this series, basically it is a book review series which focuses on older books that were very popular that I somehow missed out on. To qualify for the series, I have a set of criteria I would like a book to meet. The first being that it is at least 5 years old, with at least a 4-star rating on Goodreads, with at least 100,000 ratings. That way, I am really focusing on books that were very popular that I, again, missed the bandwagon on. For today's review, I am covering Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This is the first book in the very popular Expanse series, which is a hard science series of novels about interstellar tensions between what are known as the inner planets, that's Mars, Earth, and a lunar colony, and what is known as the Belt, which is a series of colonies in mined out asteroids in the asteroid belt in our solar system. Basically, it's between the haves and the have-nots, the haves being the inner planets and the have-nots being the belt, because the belt relies on the inner planets for 100% of their resources. That's food, water, and air, because obviously these asteroids don't have their own atmosphere. At the start of this book, those tensions explode when an ice mining ship is destroyed, and evidence comes out that Mars may be involved in the destruction of this belt-owned ship. We follow Holden, who was a member of the crew of the ice mining ship that got destroyed, but he and a few others of the crew were on the shuttle actually investigating a suspect SOS distress beacon. When they realized the distress beacon was a trap, they tried to get back to the ship only to watch it be destroyed in front of their very eyes. When they broadcast the evidence that Mars may be involved, they inadvertently paint a target on their backs. Elsewhere, on one of the asteroid colonies, we follow Miller, who is a private security contractor, basically a cop and a detective on this colony where he was born and raised. As we learn, Miller is kind of a has-been. His life has fallen apart and he has been relegated to the bottom of the department. He is given unfavorable partners and unfavorable assignment. One of these assignments is tracking down a missing girl on behalf of her wealthy inner planet family. However, the more he learns about this girl and her case, the more he becomes obsessed with it. That obsession and Holden's crew's involvement with the destroyed ice mining ship eventually brings these two together, and that is when things get really interesting, with the introduction of an alien virus. One of the things I really liked about this book was the hard science. One example of this harder science is that the people of the Belt live in lower gravity conditions, and as expected, this would have an effect on the human body, and the authors displayed that. The people of the Belt are taller, with kind of longer, thinner bones, and that actually plays into some of the tension between the Belters and the inner planets. Those physical differences set them apart. I wouldn't call it racism exactly, but it is definitely a factor in the tensions between these two groups. Another example is the authors did not shy away from the effects of high speed, high G forces on the human body. In most modern sci-fi, it is kind of just accepted that inside a pressurized spaceship, it is kind of controlled and calibrated in a way that the people inside wouldn't feel these effects of high G. But these authors did not. They went into great detail to explain just exactly how stressful high Gs would be on the crew of these spaceships. The harder science gave this book a grittier, more realistic feeling than I was expecting, and I really enjoyed it. I also really liked the part of the plot with the alien virus. Unfortunately, it's just introduced a little bit too late for my liking. In fact, it doesn't really get introduced until almost the halfway point, which meant the first half of the book was almost entirely about the conflict between the inner planets and the Belt, and I just didn't find that very interesting at all. I don't think the authors did enough work to kind of explain or justify these tensions existed in the first place. We're just sort of supposed to accept that it's true and that it is the motivation for a lot of what happens in this story. And I just don't think that they did enough work there. I just kept asking myself, why? Why are there tensions? Why do they hate each other? Why are the inner planets such dicks to the belt, and why haven't the belt done anything about it when they're supposed to be so numerous? I think I would accept it more if it was more background information, but again, it just takes up so much oxygen in the first half of the book that I felt like it needed just a little bit more justification, a little bit more detail, a little bit more backstory if we're going to spend so much time on it. However, once we hit that midpoint and that alien virus plotline really gets going, that's when this book really comes into its own. The last half of this book was so tense, so interesting, so spooky even, that I was gripped. Unfortunately, the biggest weakness of this book were the characters. I really did not feel invested in a single one of them. The cast is not very large to begin with. We have 2 POV characters and then Holden's crew, which are kind of side characters, and that's really about it. And to be frank, I didn't care about any of them. Holden and Miller in particular, I found to be mediocre white men who don't really deserve the successes they stumble into throughout the course of the book. Holden has a romance plot with one of his crew that I really don't understand at all. He just seems like such a bland guy that I can't imagine anyone having the hots for him. And Miller is this creepy dude who falls in love with the subject of his missing persons case. And that payoff I did not find cute at all either. And everyone just felt kind of like cardboard cutouts. Not a lot of personality, not a lot of personal motivations, not a lot to set them apart from each other, and just kind of like stand-ins for the audience to just kind of project whoever they wanted onto. Yet despite this, after I finished reading this, I pretty much immediately checked out the next one from the library. And it is not that often that a book with 0 characters that I care about compels me enough to keep reading, yet this one did. The setting is pretty good, and I'm hoping that the plot improves, not that the alien virus thing has kind of gotten started, and one of my least favorite characters hopefully has been exited stage left. What I'm hoping is that this series improves as it goes on, and that this book really is just a setup for larger elements that will come into play later. The characters were just mid to outright unsettlingly creepy. The forces at play behind the alien virus were kind of stereotypical and boring. And again, the tensions between the inner planets and the belt, I just didn't feel like made a whole lot of sense. But I also see the vision, I see the potential. I'm just hoping that the next book, Caliban's War, pays off. For my Caw Pile breakdown, I gave characters a 3. Again, not my favorite. Atmosphere, I gave a 6, docking it down just a little for that first half of the book where it's mostly just politics. Writing, I gave a 7. It was good, not great, but good. Plot, I gave a 7 because again, in that second half, whew, I was in it. Intrigue, again, a 7. And that is actually more because of the first part of the book and kind of finding what happened to this missing girl and how she plays into this fake distress beacon that got Holden and his crew roped in, and finding out that part. I thought that was pretty interesting. That fell off in the second half. Logic, a 7, and enjoyment, actually an 8, which is surprising to me because if you look at everything, how everything else broke down, you wouldn't think that I enjoyed it as much, but I did. I really did enjoy it. That equaled out to about a pretty solid 3-star. Read. So does it hold up? I guess it does because it's gotten me to the second book, which is really all a first book in a series needs to do, is to get people to keep reading. And there's like 9 or 10 books in this series, so really it's just getting started. I imagine that if you ask fans of the entire series if this one is the strongest, I think they would probably say no, but I don't know. I haven't read any more. Still, I'm looking forward to continuing. And that is everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. It is so appreciated. I am still just a baby channel, and every new follower and every view on my videos is seen and deeply appreciated. In my next video, I will be doing the book recommendation tag. Please look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.